A weekly review really is the linchpin for making your planning efforts really pay off. It's the linchpin for feeling organized, but knowing that might be one reason you're putting off trying it out. Hi, I'm Mystie Winckler, and you've found the Simply Convivial podcast. Short but meaty focus sessions helping you banish overwhelm and perfectionism so you can manage family life cheerfully and competently. So, what is convivial? Convivial means doing life together with joy. It's the home atmosphere that we all want as moms. But it's just not our default setting. As moms, we are the atmosphere of our homes, so we can choose joy and become the convivial tone of our home. Today, I wanted to share a clip with you from one of our masterclass sessions. The masterclass is the Mom's Weekly Review, and it is a 5-week baby step program to help moms build up a doable, small weekly review routine that will help them keep focused on the details of managing their current life. That's what a weekly review does. It's just a time to make sure you have all the pieces that you need. But a lot of times we don't even know what the pieces are that we need. And then when the stakes get high by saying this is the linchpin practice, we imagine that means it's complicated or difficult. And so we don't really even try. The masterclass walks moms through setting up a weekly review that starts with only 15 minutes. And in 15 minutes, you will see improvement. And that's what the message is in this session, which was actually the very last class in the masterclass series. And it was about how starting small matters. Starting small is how we actually see progress. So grab a basket of laundry and let's dig in. Hello! We are wrapping up the Mom's Weekly Review Masterclass. I hope that it's been helpful for you to practice baby stepping your way into a weekly review practice. And one of the final thoughts that I wanted to be sure that we covered all the way. I think we have covered this throughout, but we have all kinds of sayings in Convivial Circle to help us just get started. Smile and start. Some is better than none. 5 minutes makes a difference. Transformation 10. Iterate. All of these mottos and concepts help us remember that we have a temptation to perfectionism that we can resist. We can just get started and do something, even if we're not going to do it perfectly, even if we're not going to do it completely, even if we aren't sure what we're doing, we can still get started. And getting started is the surest way to progress. We can't wait for inspiration. We can't wait to have it all figured out before we begin. We actually figure it out by beginning, by trying, and we make progress by getting started. We actually generate inspiration by getting started. We don't wait for the inspiration to start, because often what ends up being the only kind of inspiration that motivates us to get up and get going from the couch is like a panic type of inspiration, and that's not what we want. We want motivation, momentum that is consistent and even and not panicked, that's calm and cheerful and grateful. And we generate that kind of momentum by being intentional about how we're thinking about things, by changing the story that we're telling in our head, and by just getting started and doing something small. Starting with something small, because starting is the hardest part. And so when we've started, we often keep going. We've done the hard bit when we get started. The hard bit isn't figuring it all out, because we actually don't need to be we don't have to have it all figured out. We just have to get started. So one way that we help ourselves get started is to remind ourselves that some is better than none. It's better to get half the dishes washed than to get none of the dishes washed. And all the dishes aren't going to get washed until some of them get washed. But even if you can't finish all the dishes, you can get started and you can get closer. You can give yourself a head start for the next time. Even if you can't mop all the floors, you can grab a rag and get a couple of the most visible spots. Even if you don't have a menu plan for the whole week, you can open the fridge and figure out what's for dinner tonight. And maybe not even the whole meal, but you can pick apart, okay, we're going to have at least this. And when you've started, you often find the way to keep going. But the way to keep going, the way to make real progress, the way to get to the goal often isn't visible. We don't know what it is until we have gotten started. So getting started is the key to making progress. It's the key to gaining momentum. So we can remember, some is better than none. And the same thing is true with the weekly review. It's better to do half of even the 15-minute review. It's better to do a 5-minute weekly review than to do no weekly review at all. If you had a choice between just looking at your calendar for the week while taking some notes to yourself, that's better than postponing and procrastinating until you can have the time and the place and the stuff, the setup that you would like for the perfect weekly review. Our goal with the Mom's Weekly Review is not actually to work us up to always having the beautiful, wonderful weekly review of our dreams. It would involve a clean table with all of our organization stuff and maybe stickers also, and a cup of coffee and no one else in the house. And we can imagine up an ideal, wonderful weekly review experience. And every once in a while, we might even get it. But if we make that the standard, or if we make that what we are aiming for, and we aren't going to do it until we at least have a chance at that, then we're not going to be very consistent with the weekly review. So one thing that I hope you've learned through the masterclass is that even a very brief, very non-perfect weekly review gets you somewhere. It's better. You feel more on top of life. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Remember, even with the weekly review, that a super basic, minimal, non-ideal weekly review is better than no weekly review. So that means really short. That means incomplete. That means, maybe it's happening on Tuesday rather than Saturday. Whatever is tripping you up in your expectations for it's not good enough, this doesn't count, I wish it were better. We can have those kind of thoughts all the time, but we have to turn our attention back to reality, and we have to say some is better than none. Progress over perfection. Starting is the hardest part. Smile and start. 5 minutes makes a difference. Just whatever motto resonates with you that reminds you that you can do something meaningful, even if it isn't complete or ideal. It's better to do a scrappy, hacky weekly review than no weekly review at all. And so if that's what is actually going to fit into your life right now, just run with it without any guilt, without any disappointment, without any discouragement. That's just the plan. And some is better than none. So you are doing better by choosing the minimum viable option, whether that's the weekly review or morning routine or meal plan or whatever it is that you are trying to improve. We don't actually improve by holding out the ideal to ourselves, by figuring out what that ideal is and then trying to fulfill that every time. We will actually get way closer to that ideal by starting small and by getting really good at just doing the small thing in front of us. We will get better and better at whatever we're trying to work on by wading into it rather than by jumping into the deep end. So that's just a principle that applies to the weekly review and also to any of the others. Just remember to just smile and start. Some is better than none, so don't put it off. It might be your routine, your weekly review, whatever it is that you're tempted to procrastinate. Instead of procrastinating, just say, I'm going to do 2 minutes of it. I'm going to do 5 minutes of it. Even if that's all you get to, some is better than none. And that's it for this episode of the Simply Convivial podcast. If you're enrolled in Convivial Circle, you can find the full session and all the other sessions from Mom's Weekly Review in the Mom's Weekly Review course. And if you aren't in Convivial Circle, maybe you should be. Do you know what to do when you feel overwhelmed? A weekly review is the foundational baby step that you need to combat the open loops in your life. A weekly review might not seem like a baby step. It can feel like a vague and mysterious process that you're never quite sure you're doing right. That's why I have the Mom's Weekly Review Masterclass. All members of Convivial Circle have anytime access to this 5-week masterclass, but we'll also be working on it together with extra accountability starting December 1st. Having a weekly review in place is a great way to begin the new year. So to do the Mom's Weekly Review Masterclass with us in December, you can enroll in Convivial Circle or register just to the masterclass itself. Check it out at simplyconvivial.com/review. That's simplyconvivial.com/review, or you can find the link in the episode description. A weekly review is one way you can practice repenting, rejoicing, and repeating.